Welcome to today's webcast. We're going to be focusing on the business and operational benefits accruing to capital markets firms on the back of developing and deploying machine learning technology and data analytics to enhance their front office decision-making functions. This is an hour-long discussion sponsored by Linedata. My name is Victor Anderson, and I'm Editor-in-Chief of WatersTechnology. Welcome, everyone. So, first things first, let's meet today's panelists. You will hear a little bit from them in a few moments, but on today's panel is Jiao Sun, who is Lead AI Engineer at RBC Wealth Management in London. We also have Gordon Liu, who is US Head of Global Risk Analytics at HSBC in New York. Representing today's sponsor is Gary Brackenridge, who is Global Head of R&D and North America at Linedata. He's in New York too. And then finally, Felisa Hanson, also representing Linedata, Head of Transformation at the organization at Linedata in Boston. So welcome to today's panelists. Now, I have a few housekeeping notes for today's audience members. As I mentioned, this is a 60-minute webcast and will consist of a panel discussion followed by panelist responses to audience members' questions. If, as a member of today's audience, you do have a question of your own for today's panelists, you can direct them via the Ask a Question tab beneath the slide panel on your screen. Now, today's webcast comes on the back of a piece of research carried out by WatersTechnology on behalf of Linedata titled Setting Out the Business Case for AI and Machine Learning Adoption. It's been quite popular as a piece of research. It's been downloaded many times from the risk.net library. And if you want to access that piece of research, then you can download the white paper from the resource list section on your player. It's in the top right-hand corner of your player. You should be able to download that and access it now. There are a couple of key findings that emerged from this piece of research, and I'd like to mention just three very briefly. 36% of respondents to the research are familiar with AI and machine learning technology, even though their roles do not currently benefit from it. So clearly there's a lot of interest and a lot of acknowledgement that the technology is around and people are certainly keeping an eye on it, even though not everybody is currently benefiting from the technology. The next finding is that 40% of respondents cited a lack of internal technology skill and or competence as the greatest challenge to the adoption of AI and machine learning technology, which is not surprising. A lot of buy-side organizations, they are very keen to go down the AI machine learning route, but don't really know where to start. And finally, 33% of respondents believe that AI and machine learning technology will allow them to make better investment decisions, which is crucial from a buy-side perspective. So given the title of today's webcast, it's clear that we're going to be focusing on the development and implementation of machine learning and data analytics and what they might offer capital markets firms in terms of the potential to make more insightful and accurate front office decisions, while also managing operational and compliance risk more precisely, as well as streamlining back office processing. But before we get into that discussion, what I'd like to do is just ask today's panelists just to introduce themselves very briefly and explain their day-to-day remits with respect to today's content. So first up is Jiao.
So, hey everyone, this is Jiao Sun from London. Oh, okay. Yes, Jiao Sun from London. I work for RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, and I am leading our innovation lab here in London. So basically, what our lab do is trying to simulate a human behavior that can help us to fast up our internal process. That's the main funding idea of this lab. So because the business needs to expand, we're trying to hire more headcounts. But by that time, we think, okay, so many of the works are duplicated, right? Can we build up some process or a robot, let's say, an AI, help us to speed up those processes and also to cut down some of our headcount. So basically, that's the original idea of this lab, and now we are expanding our abilities to different parts of wealth management business and trying to make more intelligent decisions. throughout this AI and a data-driven approach. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jiao. Over to you, Gordon. Do you want to talk a little bit about your remit at HSBC?
Hi, everyone. This is Gordon Liu. I'm heading the U.S. the Global Risk Analytics for HSBC. So from my perspective, the machine learning and AI actually is very practical. So that means we're using the techniques, which is mostly advanced techniques, to build algorithms that make quicker and better business decisions. So those decisions include credit, and particularly from my perspective, is risk decisions. Credit risk, market risk, operational risk, compliance, and anti-money laundering, monitoring activity, those kind of decisions. So from my perspective also, if we see the data analytics, actually it's meaning the leveraging the cutting edge techniques in the computer science and mathematics combined together to make those kind of information from extracting the data. And at the same time, it's very important for HSBC and the banking industry to understand the bias that's actually existed in the historical data per today's standards and making the right decision that's satisfying today's standards and fit into today's business environments. Back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Gordon. Now, representing today's sponsor, Linedata, is Gary Brackenridge in New York, and then we'll also hear from Felisa Hanson, and Felisa is in Boston today. So over to you, Gary.
Thank you. So again, I'm Gary Brackenridge. I run global R&D for the Linedata asset management business, as well as our North American business. We're using machine learning and AI, building upon our experience historically providing software for asset management as an industry. So we're applying machine learning and AI from an operational perspective, using basically these techniques, these tools, these capabilities to understand patterns, nuances, and to be able to make predictions around the operational behavior of our clients with the pure intention of finding insights that have not been achieved before to permanently lower the cost curve of these firms. So we're taking a very practical view, much Gordon, like you have positioned it, to try to find real operational efficiencies that can be gleaned using new tools for old problems. Back to you.
Good. Thanks, Gary. And finally to Felisa Hanson. Now, Felisa is Head of Transformation at Linedata in Boston. So, Felisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about your role at Linedata with respect to today's content and webcast?
Absolutely. Thank you, Victor. So I, as part of my role of the head of transformation, I'm working very closely with Gary to launch our operational analytics service for our clients. And what that means from a practical standpoint is I work very closely with our clients and prospects to understand where their operational needs lie, where they need those extra insights, to get a global view of how our machine learning models can help them improve their operational outcomes and to Gary's point, lower their cost curves.
Good. Okay, lovely. Thank you all very much. Right, I think a good kicking off point for today's webcast is let's define exactly what we mean with respect to machine learning and data analytics, because especially machine learning, that term, it's just used interchangeably with AI, and it can mean lots of different things to different organizations. So the first question I'm going to put to Jiao and also to Gordon, do you want to just define exactly what we mean for the purposes of this webcast when we talk about machine learning and data analytics? Can you give us kind of an interpretation of those two terms from your own perspective? First to Jiao.
Okay, so machine learning. So this sounds like a magic term, like people are thinking, oh, is the machine going to think? Is the machine going to make decisions for me? But actually, machine learning is something that has already been here for over half decade. Half century. Sorry. It comes from the statistical method. Like in 60s or 70s, there's already some tools that we use to drive some signals from, let's say, time series data. Right? We get some alpha, beta, and then run into a model to get our signals for trading, let's say. So that's the same idea, but what triggers the machine learning to become a new concept is because of the computation development, right? Now the computation power is very at a very new stage, and then human beings are able to compute large amount of data, which makes machine learning into a new trend again. So basically, machine learning is still something that we find patterns in historical data and then get signals for the future or get predictions for the future. That's my definition for the machine learning part.
Okay, good. Gordon, does that tie in with your view of the world with respect to machine learning and data analytics?
Right, that exactly. I think that's interesting. I think he mentioned about it existed there for a very long time already. It's very true, because right now, very different with before, is that we do have the computational power and we do have a lot of data. So for me, it's actually, so for machine learning, anything we talk about, it has to resolve a real business needs more efficiently than current way, and has to be make sure we do have the high quality data, we do have computational infrastructure, and resolve the business needs efficiently and satisfy regulation requirements I mentioned before. And at the same time, that one has to be explainable somehow, even though machine learning, some people describe as a black box. But for me, for us, we need to crystallize or at least make it green, so not so black. Make sure it can be explainable, and also we need to have some fallback methodology to if there's any issue with the machine learning itself. Back to you, Victor.
Good. Gordon, yeah, I think you touched on a number of really key issues there. They're kind of the transparency, the explainability, et cetera, especially when you're coming up with especially from a kind of a compliance perspective and also from a trading perspective. If you've got AI machine learning kind of driving your algorithmic trading business, you need to kind of understand exactly what you've got. The whole idea of just information coming out of a black box is not going to fly any longer. So yeah, that's something that is clearly on a lot of people's minds in the industry. Let's turn this conversation on its head right now, and let's discuss exactly the same issues from with Gary and Felisa. So, what are you hearing from your clients, Gary and Felisa, with respect to the applications of machine learning and data analytics to them? And on a day-to-day basis, what do these two terms mean to buy-side organizations that you tend to interact with, Gary?
Well, thank you, Victor. So the terms have become somewhat interchangeable for many of our clients. And over the past few years, most of the effort that we've seen for our clients on the asset management, on the buy side, traditionally called, of the industry, have really focused on using these techniques to support their investment decision process, making better trades or doing a better job at trading. And we're now seeing a shift a bit away from that. It's not a magic alpha finding machine for most firms, but rather can be used to support many different types of decisions and many different types of processes. So we are seeing a bit of a shift. We completely agree, Gordon, with your insight. We have to have this veil of transparency, or this veil removed, provide that transparency, and help people understand it's a series of mathematical calculations performed in a computational environment that drive an insight. And that's the interesting part. So it's becoming realer, I would say, on behalf of our clients, and more practical, finally, as it turns out. Felisa or Victor?
Yeah, I'm going to pass that over to Felisa. Have you got anything to add in addition to Gary's comments?
Sure. I would say that the insights are useful only when they're actionable. What we're seeing at our clients is that that they're interested in receiving these insights from their data, from market data, from other data providers, but it's only useful when there's a practical application to those machine learning and AI insights.
Yeah. I guess that's actually that can be used as a proxy for all technology in the capital markets. There's no point in adopting and implementing the technology if there's no practical application of the technology on a day-to-day basis, right?
That's right.
Good. Okay. Let's move on then. So in an ideal world, let's talk about the day-to-day, the practical benefits. Now, obviously, Felisa has just mentioned this, practical benefits of developing and deploying machine learning and data analytics. And I'm going to put this over to our two end users, firstly to Gordon and then to Jiao. Do you want to talk specifically about HSBC and RBC's, RBC Wealth Management's perspective with respect to the practical day-to-day benefits of developing this type of technology and implementing it? What would you say to that? Firstly, Gordon, and then Jiao.
So, Victor, if you're asking the ideal world, I can't imagine. So if we're going to see, if you imagine that you can make best possible credit decisions or trading decisions instantly, real time, and effectively alerting any suspicious activity for money laundering or financial crime or fraud, you call that, and offering the financial products to clients when there is a lead, and right at the time and right place, and also right amount. So that's going to be really ideal. Many times right now is human intervention. And human intervention in itself many times is good, but it's going to be manually absorb many informations on the paper, on the news, or somewhere. It's very difficult. So if we getting those kind of informations, everything together, making informed or the best possible solution, and automatically everything we do, you can see that that's going to be efficient, how much going to be improved, how much we're seeing cost effective, and also we can deploy people really doing the right things need to do, not doing the manual operational things for that part. So I would say the business need, the practical needs is everywhere. And only thing is that how do we bring the solution to those issues?
Yes. Okay, Jiao, do you want to comment on that same issue?
Yeah, actually, the term I always use is seamless. So in order to, or let's say if you get a product that best fits your client, right, the best form is that it seamlessly plug into your client's original behavior or patterns, right? Like, let's say we have, let's say for our internal users, let's say we're trying to process their documents. Sorry, you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Seems like the line dropped. Sorry. Yeah, let's say if we are going to give some digital process of the numbers on Excel file, right? If we have to ask our employees to copy paste those numbers onto a new web app and then do the calculation, do the machine learning to get signals, why don't we just take the Excel that everyone is using today and then we process them, as like for all the business automation process, right? We take whatever our current employee is using and then we transform them into some forms that we need to use in the machine learning algorithms and then give the results and put it back into the Excel form and then give it to them. Okay, let's say you have this form and you just have your requests on different sheets, and we give you results, and you don't have to change your behavior. So that's for the internal. The same thing happens for external, for our end users, our clients, right? We don't want to ask them to learn for something new. We are trying to see what they are used to, and then using machine learning or AI, we optimize the process. We spend less headcount, of course, and then make it faster. As Liu just said, as Gordon Liu just said, we make the process faster. We get signals and we get decisions faster, so that you can get what you want. Our end users can get what they want, like seamlessly. So I think seamless is a term that I want to emphasize.
Okay, good. Let's move on. I'm going to ask Felisa and then Gary specifically about the practical benefits, so the practical applications of developing machine learning and data analytics. What are you seeing on the buy side, Felisa, obviously a lot of buy-side firms in the Boston area. And then, Gary, perhaps you could comment as well. So what I'm driving at is there a trend that you're seeing in terms of the business processes that are being used or that are being supported by machine learning and data analytics? And if so, what specifically are those kind of business activities or that buy-side firms are supporting with this technology? So firstly, Felisa, and then to Gary.
Sure. So what we're seeing is that the practical applications of using machine learning is driven and maybe sort of limited by the type of data that the client has available or what's available to pull from. And also, and this is the most important, is the expertise to find meaningful correlations for the client. I really want to emphasize that. As I said before, machine learning models and their results are only practical when a user can take action against them, when they can change behaviors and they can drive outcomes that are beneficial for their business. So, finding correlations between data or patterns of behaviors that might drive the negative outcomes or the positive outcomes that the clients are looking for is critically important here. What we want to avoid is sending the end users down paths of behavior modification that may turn out to be false leads or may potentially be more expensive than the issue that they're trying to resolve. The way we see that being implemented in the most successful way is to make sure that there's a tight coupling between the data science teams and the people who understand how the data is driving the behavior and the business expertise to change the outcomes that are desired by the organization.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Felisa. Gary, do you want to talk about the business functions that are underpinned by AI from a buy-side perspective?
Certainly. Thank you, Victor. So, again, historically, we have been using, on the buy side, machine learning and some AI techniques for a while now, particularly around trying to find alpha, correlating risk, correlating asset classes together, understanding things of that fashion. So truly at the very front end of the front office process. We have, of course, seen over the past few years an evolution of these techniques being applied another step or two into the investment chain, including making decisions about where to send trades, execution venue decisions, measuring the outcomes of those trades, and then making future decisions based upon how well the last counterparty did in a given scenario and what have you. So that's tightly coupled with transaction cost analysis and related.
Right.
We have started to see more and more in the business process side, moving into things like pre- and post-trade compliance.
Right.
We've also started to see, and what we're pushing and spending our time on at Linedata includes, trade settlement, post-trade processing, collateral management, and related functions. These business functions do take a lot of time and money at most firms, and they are typically viewed as a cost center. So we're looking at, thinking of operational alpha in that regard, freeing capital from the investment process. But we started at the beginning of this industry, at the very front end. It's very cool, very exciting to go find alpha, but we're now evolving into more practical next steps in the process.
Right. And also a lot of those functions that you just mentioned, typically those back office functions are heavily manually intensive, right? So a lot of headcount around them as well, which is costing buy-side organizations a lot of money. And if you can speed those processes up, make them more accurate, reduce the number of people touching that information, then so much better for the organization. That directly impacts the bottom line, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah. Okay. I'd just like to provide today's audience members just with a little bit of some housekeeping notes. Now, we have a fair number of people on this call, and what I'd like them to know is that there was a little bit of research carried out by WatersTechnology and Linedata. The research yielded a white paper called It's titled Setting Out the Business Case for AI and Machine Learning Adoption. Now, you can download that white paper from the resource list section of your player. It's in the top right-hand corner of your player. Also, an additional piece of information that you might like is that we would welcome questions to today's audience members. And I see that we already have a number of questions that have dropped into the queue, and we will be addressing those in due course. But please, if you do have any questions of your own for today's audience members, you can direct them via the Ask a Question tab in your player. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about making the business case for adopting machine learning and data analytics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Felisa and Gary to comment on this first. Now, obviously, they speak to a lot of buy-side organizations. And one of the key issues for buy-side organizations is, yes, we want the technology, but how do we actually sell it to ExCo members or whatever? How do we make the hard business case for actually adopting the technology? So I'll ask Gary first and then Felisa to follow him up. Gary, with respect to making the business case for adopting the technology, how do you typically, what are the kind of the questions and the issues that are brought up by buy-side organizations when you go and see them?
Yeah, well, I think they're good questions. The challenges that we hear, and this also speaks to the constant evolution and the maturity yet to be achieved in this part of technology within the buy-side business. Many people are a little shy, to be honest, around machine learning and AI projects. They may have engaged in a proof of concept or done some sort of initial exploratory work. Perhaps it was not well managed. Perhaps it was with something that wasn't mature enough yet, or the goal was too ambitious. So when we have the opportunity to speak with a client, we're very, very focused and at their direction on what is a practical, achievable process and a project where we could think together as to what the desired outcome is, and how could we progressively understand if that was going to be achieved or not. So in a practical engagement, we take this view that we'll spend a few weeks with an initial analysis phase, understanding do we think we can drive an insight and come up with something valuable. If so, we'll move ahead to the next step. But we're taking that kind of, take it easy. We have a lot of experience, so we come with ideas and things ready to go. If it looks promising, and we both agree, then we set a project scope and do it incremental. So I think the short answer to your question is, right, incrementally and in each step with a clearly defined outcome. And you'll either achieve it or not. And that's another part of the beauty of this approach. By keeping track of your own analytics and keeping track of how if your behavior changes have driven a better outcome, you self-define your ROI for this project. And that's a really important point. Right? We're looking at an operational perspective. So if the operation no longer behaves like it used to, you're measuring and tracking that as part of your process. And you'll be able to define the money that's saved or not saved. Full stop.
Right. And Gary, with respect to ROI, it's a key component to this conversation. In fact, it's a key component to any technology conversation. To what extent are Linedata's clients and prospects, to what extent have they developed a kind of a formalized framework by which they measure the ROI of technology that is implemented? Is that something that is that's a universally accepted norm now, or do buy-side organizations kind of need to be kind of dragged in that direction?
I wouldn't say dragged is the right word, right? I think most firms
enticed, perhaps,
and we can put. Yes, but I think most firms and most providers, right, and I'll speak honestly here and consider us as part of the industry, our industry has had a very difficult time measuring and or achieving the planned ROI on traditional technology projects. That's a statement of fact. It's not a critical remark. We just have not been great at this. Projects get delayed, scope changes, management changes, all of these things. And the net result is the ROI planned versus what was ultimately achieved is often completely apples to oranges, as it were, in many cases. With this type of an engagement, machine learning and AI, if you're structuring your project properly up front, this actually avoids the problem. Meaning it's much easier to calculate ROI because you have definitionally the basis by which to measure yourself. You know where you're starting, you know where you would like to go, and you will see if it happens or not. So we find that these types of projects are actually easier for people to understand what the ROI will or won't be, and there's proof, factual, actual evidence that it happened. On many other types of technology projects, there's a lot of subjectivity. Were the users happy enough? Right? Was the system properly integrated? Was the date hit? Was the scope changed? Some of these things are very subjective. This is not one of those. In some sense, the data doesn't lie. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, Gary, thanks very much. I'm going to put the same question over to Felisa. And Felisa, obviously, you speak to a lot of buy-side organizations. So do you want to talk us through some of the issues that crop up when they need to develop the business case for adopting machine learning and data analytics? Typically, how do they address that prickly issue?
Sure, and I think clients have come to us when they've had these issues that have been in the organization for many, many years, when they've tried many different approaches to try to mitigate the same risks or fix the same problems over and over again without the desired outcome. And so using machine learning and data analytics to help solve those problems provides them with a new tool or a new set of insights. And so to Gary's point, where they come a little sheepishly, it's mainly because they've tried all the tools in their arsenal and haven't been able to resolve the issue or get the outcomes that they're looking for. The proof of concept period is absolutely critical to this, not only to show the return on investment in this type of project and what a wider scale adoption could provide, but it also changes the hearts and minds of those individuals that might be reticent to adopt this type of technology. So, if you have been in the same role for, many, many years doing the same thing and you're quite happy to do that thing, it's sometimes hard to digest the message that you're going to have to do things different in order to provide better and different outcomes for your organization. So proof of concept not only shows the return on investment from a monetary perspective, but also can drive the behaviors of the culture that you're trying to change within your organization as well. And we saw that in the white paper, I think it was something like a quarter of the respondents said that they were already in a proof of concept using AI and machine learning within their organizations before they moved anything into production.
Yep, absolutely. I remember that. That's a key finding that came out of that research. I'm going to put the same sort of issue to Jiao and to Gordon, and I'm going to ask both of them. First Jiao and then Gordon. Have you been able to measure the tangible business benefits gleaned on the back of deploying machine learning and or data analytics? In other words, do you have metrics in place that help you say, yes, we've saved X amount of time, or yes, we've created, X number of dollars and cents? Do you have something measurable, something to look at, something that the exco would say, yeah, this is a very good technology or great project or something along those lines? Do you want to talk a little bit about the tangible business benefits on the back of your organizations deploying machine learning and data analytics? Firstly to Jiao and then Gordon.
Hey, yeah, actually this touched the nerve of all our, all organizations like us. We have so many years of history, and there are systems who are built into our built into this bank or built into the desk, like even older than me. So I think when we talk about metrics to see whether this thing or this method helps with the either the cost efficient or the revenue generated, right? A very important thing is that you can find ways to make sure all the tools that your current, let's say, salespeople or your current investment guys or your current relation managers are using can connect to each other. Let's say we have CRMs, right? So since you are building, let's say you are building a sales AI, helping your salespeople or relation managers to increase their target, right? Then there needs to be something to connect with the CRM to show that what is suggested by this AI, or what this AI, what are the advices given by the AI, and which ones did this relation manager adopted, right? Which approach did this manager did, right? If you have this whole process written into a very simple and seamless, as I said again, seamless and intuitive tool where your relation manager don't think ticking, let's say I tick A or B, option C, ticking those things or typing down my sales process. If he don't think it's additional burden, instead, if he think it's a way to help him to accelerate his selling process or to better optimize his next deal, then they will be happy to do so. By doing so, then you will have an exact number to show whether there will be, or whether your actions, your decisions from the AI, from the algorithm, do generated revenue to your business stakeholders. So the important part of I want to include. I want to conclude that the important part is how or is there a way in your organization to help you get connected with all the tools or all the systems that already been there for so many years, get them work together to make sure that we can make the target accountable. That's a very important part that we are facing for the previous years, and now we've been doing putting so much effort to trying to make sure that all these numbers can get through, and we can see how clearly this AI helps our either sales process or the internal operation process.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Gordon, do you want to have a stab at that as well? Just talk about.
Yeah.
Is your organization able to measure the direct business benefits in terms of time saving or dollars and cents to the organization?
I think this is an excellent question in here. So given the bank is so big, or different functions, different business has a different measure for the success of the AI or ML technology application. So there's certainly some is measurable using the dollar, some is actually not by the dollar. But I will give you one example here that clearly is dollar. So for HSBC, we actually deploy the voice ID in the UK and replace those text, the passwords. So since inception from 2016, and we have actually avoided or saved $350 million in fraud. So to avoid those the fraudulent loss, and in the clients itself, in the UK itself, just one day, that's $350 million.
Wow. So just to clarify, that's 350 million pounds, I assume, dollars worth of fraud that actually didn't take place since you implemented the technology, correct?
That's exactly.
Those are the savings.
We do have many years data to see how many loss we had each year for the fraud because our passwords. Right. This one is the saving. Yes.
Okay, that's an astonishing figure. Thank you. So I suppose the proof of the pudding is in the eating then, and that is proof that actually there is some very measurable ROI related to some of this technology. Moving on now, and I'm going to put this to Felisa first, and then to Gary. This question about what are the biggest challenges that buy-side firms need to address when it comes to the development and deployment of machine learning technology and data analytics. So typically, what are the challenges that you're hearing from buy-side firms that you're going in to speak to, et cetera, and talking about this technology? What are the things that they kind of keep them up at night? What are their pain points right now? So Felisa first, and then to Gary.
Sure. I think that varies from firm to firm. It like I said earlier, there are these problems that have persisted within their organization that seem to be intractable. In terms of the challenge of adoption of these types of models, I'll echo a statement I said before. There are really two challenges that clients have, and that's the resources that are going to be using the tools and responding to those tools indications, and also the data that's available to provide that type of insight. And so I think from a cultural perspective, before we go down the path of any proof of concepts or any deployments of software, we need to make sure that the resources are on board to adopt it. Again, to your point, the proof in the pudding is in the eating, and so that's where a proof of concept can really show how the technology can shine. On the data side of things, when listening to the example of the amount of fraud that was prevented by adopting a new type of voice recognition, I mean that the way that's measured is understanding that what historical data is available to the organization to make that kind of measurement. And so one of the first things that you have to do is to make an assessment of the types of data that are available to the client and understand whether that needs to be augmented with external parties. So that is a challenge that needs to be addressed as part of that type of adoption as well.
Good. Felisa, do you find that typically the buy-side firms that you talk to, that there is, from the people who you're speaking to, there's a kind of a reluctance or a slight pushback that they're worried about the adoption of this technology might end up reducing headcount, and they might actually ultimately end up losing their jobs too, which is that's certainly an issue that has come up at a number of our conferences over the years. The adoption of technology typically means that there will be a reduction in headcount sooner or later. I think certainly what we're hearing as well is that there might be redeployment of those resources within the organization and not necessarily just a total loss of headcount. But to what extent are you hearing that from buy-side firms and kind of sensing there might be a slight reluctance to the adoption of this technology?
Sure. From at the top level, where we're talking with the decision makers, they're very keen to deploy this kind of technology within their organization. But to your point, the lower level workers who need to actually use these tools do have a bit of fear behind them, because not necessarily a fear that their job is going to be eliminated, but it's going to change, and that kind of change and uncertainty around that change, what that change is going to be, does lead to a reluctance of a sign off saying, yes, this is the future of our organization and where we want to go.
Right. Okay, good. Gary, I'm going to pass the first question over to you, and that is, let's talk about the challenges that typically you identify within buy-side organizations when you go talk to them about the adoption of AI and data analytics. What are you hearing from buy-side firms?
Yeah, well, I'll hit a little bit upon the sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt or doom, depending on how you think of it. A little bit of it, but what we really see, practically speaking, is most firms in their operational areas are very good at their jobs. They have spent a lot of years honing their operation environments and have really optimized many, many things. Never perfect, but constantly evolving. So when you show up with a new approach to look at existing arrangements and to look at things in a different way, the insights that you achieve may be counterintuitive. And to a long-time operations veteran, those may be very hard messages to hear, right? Whether a correlation or a pattern or an identification, some insight has been garnered by looking at their existing situation in a new way or with a new set of tools. That information, when it's counterintuitive or it's not obvious, is very hard for very experienced operational people to receive. It's difficult. And just as human beings, that's how we think, right?
Yep.
That pattern can't exist. How could I have missed that? That really can't be true. So a challenge there is to get people comfortable with why there is how the insight was garnered, and then to talk very specifically about what could you do to take advantage of the insight, right? Let's work together. Should you retrain, change an integration point, redo your batch processing, or whatever the case may be? Improve your data source, deal with the counterparty in a different fashion, what have you. So I think once you get it resolved past that stunning, oh, wow, there's an insight I never saw, but I'm the expert situation, you can then resolve it down to, let's think this through. That project you had to replace that piece of software, maybe that's now more important because you see the impact it's having on your environment. And it actually then empowers these people to have credible, quantifiable conversations to get projects funded to improve their operation. They may have had 50 projects on the go, most of which were just taking their sweet time. With this kind of an insight, you could get a prioritization, which is empowering to our clients. So there you go.
Good. Gary, just another question on the back of that. To what extent are buy-side firms' kind of existing technology stacks impinging their ability to embrace this technology? So, for example, buy-side firms are well known for having a lot of legacy technology, a lot of working in silos across different asset classes, data sitting in various repositories around the business, etc. So to what extent is that whole kind of technology estate hamstringing buy-side firms in terms of their adoption?
Well, I think it depends on the use case and, again, what insight or what advancement you're looking to achieve. As it turns out, looking at the world through an operational prism, right, the reason there's an operational prism to look through is that it's multifaceted technology and operation stack. So it's actually not that big of a problem. If we think about the role of financial service institutions, everybody has locked inside or inside of a database or data structure of some sort all the evidence of their operational behaviors. By definition, it only exists if it was captured in a system somewhere, right? The efforts of a human or a system were captured somewhere. So the evidence set, as we like to think about it, as we look for operational inefficiencies, the evidence set is there. So that doesn't necessarily hamstring anything. Now, again, the business expertise and the technical wherewithal and just time to go and pull things together in a useful fashion and do a proper project, well, that's hard. It's always hard. That's never going to be any easier. So that shouldn't be particularly scary in that regard. So if you think about using machine learning, though, from a true, investment decisioning, alpha generation, or alpha finding exercise, really try to use it for the very high-end stuff, disparate data sets is a real problem. But they don't tend to be the in-house data sets that you're missing anyway. You're going to have to source those through third party. So as it turns out, I don't actually think the technology state of affairs is all that much of an impediment, which is a little counterintuitive.
Good. Okay, Gary, thanks. I note that it's almost 8 minutes to the top of the hour, so we need to move on. I've got a question for Jiao and Gordon here, and both of you are experienced within your organizations with respect to the technology that we're talking about now. Do you want to just cite or mention the key ingredients to any competent machine learning or data analytics tool or platform? So what would you say to, let's say a counterpart at another bank comes to you and says, we're thinking of doing this. What are the key ingredients that we need to consider? What would you say to them? Firstly to Jiao and then to Gordon.
Oh, that's a very good question. I think nowadays, those, in terms of machine learning, right, those tools are mostly open source and free out there in the internet. Like Google has their own, Facebook also has their PyTorch, right? And then there are third parties like Keras or Theano. They all have their frameworks. So I wouldn't say I will suggest a platform. I think whichever platform that you think your team can get used to, right? Then that's a good one, good fit for your team. So I think the thing that I will ask them to think twice is, firstly, is this problem really an AI or machine learning problem? Because most of these people will confuse AI. There are actually automation intelligence and artificial intelligence. So is this something really needs an AI or machine learning, really deserve that you spend a large chunk of money to invest in? Or maybe just an RPA company can help you do a quick business automation? We shouldn't think of anything that needs to be solved by this machine learning algorithms, right? But most of times we can just make an automation process and make sure that and make the problem work. And then secondly is the data. Obviously, like as Gordon mentioned as well in the very first question. So nowadays, why machine learning go into the trend again is because of the first of the computation power, second of the data, right? The volume of the data. So when you want to do something, you need to think about whether the problem you're trying to address, whether our company has enough data to support it, or whether there are some third-party vendors in the world that we can buy some data from. But in which cases, if you want to apply a machine learning algorithm over it, you need to have a very large volume of data. Yeah, so basically that's the 2 points I think I would suggest.
Okay, so just before I let you go, so to what extent is your machine learning technology, is it proprietary within the organization, or does it come from a third party? Or is it a kind of a mix of both? Are you able to comment on that?
Not really, sorry.
Okay. Yes, that's absolutely fine.
I would say most of the companies, are now supporting academia researchers. If you go to some of the machine learning top conferences like NIPS or ICML, you will see, well, of course, including us and many other companies, they are now publishing papers. So, so corporates are trying to, finding a point where they can share some of the IP to the world to ask more, scientists to help creating something cool, but also preserve some part of the IP within the company. So basically, I would say it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jia. Gordon, do you want to answer that question? And that is, if someone comes from another bank and says, I don't want to make the same mistakes that you did, tell me all the stuff that you learned along the way so that I don't have to, I can go from point A to point B without making all those mistakes. What would you say to them?
I would say I couldn't agree more with Jiao was saying in here, right? What kind of data you talk about, right? So where you had some mistakes, do I have the same data as you have? Maybe the same, maybe not. So what is actually the resolution you get? What's your goal of resolving the problem? Are you trying to improve the customer experience? So what's the purpose of your solution itself? And is that addressing my business issue? If I want to improve efficiency, I want to make more profits, or customer journey better. So that one has to be absolutely saying, are you testing my data, using my data? Is going to resolve my issue, and what's the control being there? Because some of the problem is not going to be controlled by the machine, at least not for long. And not for some foreseeable future, has to be controlled by humans. So how do you identify that? How do you correct the bias being there, or even introducing some breaking of compliance or standards, right? So for the bank, that has to be in there. I would say if you're asking for combined internal, external, I do agree it's going to be combined.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. I'm conscious of the fact that we haven't got much time at all. So I'm going to put a final question to Gary and then give the final word of this webcast to Felisa. Gary, when capital markets firms, let's talk specifically about buy-side organizations, given that we Linedata, that's Linedata sweet spot. So buy-side organizations, when they go about developing such capabilities, what should they look for in a partner? I'm sure you get this kind of question all the time. In the event that they opt for external help in this regard, what do you think are the key criteria that they need to consider when looking to partner with an external provider?
Yeah, I think, so again, great question. And yes, we do get that one, often in a different form, such as, well, why should we work with you? Which is a slightly more aggressive form of that same question. In terms of a partner in this area, right, so getting comfort with how data science works and getting your own team or capabilities around understanding mathematics and how the mathematics of data science and ML and AI techniques work is important to do in-house. I would not recommend that you try to partner that out of the house because you won't trust the results. So when you look for a partner, I would look for somebody that is going to take a practical point of view and doesn't come with a too vague of a pitch. Well, just tell us anything, and we'll go and try to find a giant data set and go wandering around with deep learning and an unsupervised approach. And we're just going to hopefully find something someday. Those types of things are not very helpful. So look for a partner that really understands the type of business impact you're looking to achieve, that is of the similar scale, meaning they know how to work with a firm of your size, big, small, or medium. We found that size matchups in terms of scale of organization is also important. And again, a practical approach, right? People that are very confident in their ability to quickly tell you whether they could help you or not help you, right? And we advise our clients in that regard all the time. Look for somebody willing to say, we may find in 3 weeks we could never help you, and we will not try to sell you something otherwise.
Right. Good. Sage remarks there. Final question to Felisa then. Same question, in fact, Felisa. You've got the last word in this conversation. Typically, what are you hearing from potential clients in terms of what they want from external providers? What are the criteria that they should consider?
Sure. I mean, the reason why clients come to talk to us about their issues is that they either don't have that data science expertise in-house, and they're looking for someone who can provide that, or they do, but to Gary's point, these are more generalists, or they're looking for data sets that might not be available, or that are too large to give practical results in a fast manner. And so what we recommend to our clients is to look for a partner that has a marriage of those two types of skill sets, that have experience in the type of data that you have within your organization that affect your business, that understand how your data tells a story of how your operations or your organization runs. And someone who also has the business expertise to translate those insights into how your organization can change based on what those models are telling you to do. That it's not just the creation of the tool or the model, it's how your organization responds to those tools that really matters.
Good. Felisa, thank you very much indeed for that. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially to our audience members, we're going to need to leave it there because the hour has just flown by and we're already after 4 o'clock London time. So we're going to need to end today's webcast right there. It would be remiss of me not to mention questions from PricewaterhouseCoopers, TD, I assume that's TD Securities, Bank of America sent a few questions in, Linedata obviously, and also the Lloyd's Banking Group. To everybody who responded, thank you very much indeed for your questions. I will forward them on to the folks at Linedata. That just leaves me the task of thanking today's panelists, JL Sun from RBC Wealth Management, Gordon Liu from HSBC, Gary Brackenridge from Linedata Asset Management in New York, and Felisa Hanson also from Linedata Asset Management. She's in Boston. To all of you, thank you very much indeed for your insights, your advice, your openness, etc. It's been a fantastic hour. So. Thank you all very much indeed, and also to today's audience members, thank you very much for your attendance. On behalf of Linedata and also WatersTechnology, I'm bringing this webcast to a close, and I hope to catch up with all of you sometime in the not too distant future. Thank you.